Hi friends, so today I'm going to show you some watercolor techniques. I know when we're in class, I sit with you and I show you these while we're doing it, but since some of us are in remote and at home, I want you to be able to have these techniques with your families. So parents, this is also for you so that you can help your child during any watercolor session. Okay, so first off, we're going to talk about paper. Now, regular copy paper is not very good for watercolor. I mean, you can use it, but something that's a little bit heavier, even construction paper is better. And actually, you could even use a paper plate because it is heavier. Poster board, actual watercolor paper isn't that expensive. You can get it on Amazon pretty inexpensively. And just something with a little bit that will take the water, right? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is using the watercolor tray. Now you can this is the basic Crayola set and it has all the colors. It's the one we have at school, but you can also get some with more colors. These are great purchases at the dollar store. And what I like to do before I start is I have a container of water, and I like to use a little container because if you use something too tall, it might spill. And don't put that much water in it. You don't need that much water. So I'm going to put some water in on a plain, heavier brush. And I'm going to wet all the colors before I even start. Just tap in some color or wetness just to get them kind of started. Okay? That kind of soaks in a little bit and gets them all started. So I'll do that with my other one as well. I'm just going to tap it in there. So I used to just pour water in there, but then that just gets really messy. You don't need that much because then when you start it, you're going to really get it wet, whichever color you choose. Now that I've wet my stuff, I'm going to get out some different brushes. Now, for the reason why a lot of times you get one little basic brush with your watercolor is a lot of times people use watercolor for details, and it's not necessarily the case for children. You can use any of your brushes, and I've got a variety of sizes here because if you want to do a whole wash of color like we did with our artist study in November, you're going to want a bigger brush because if you're using the little brush, it's going to scratch, right? It's going to get scratchy. So have a bunch of different brushes, and again, with the brush, I like to wet it real good. You don't want to have anything dry because remember, it's watercolor, right? All right, so now let's just start with my medium-sized brush, and I'm going to take the basic Crayola, and remember our little song here that we always do: water, color, and then paint. And sometimes I tell the children, if you really want it darker, go back to the color first and just go color paint, and that's going to make your color a little darker. But usually it's water, color, paint. Water on the brush, paint on the brush, and then paint, please. So you see here I've made some purple marks. So if I just go straight to color instead of going back to water, it's going to get darker, right? And if I want to make it lighter, you could go straight to water and lighten it up. Okay, now what happens when you're doing your watercolor and let's say you really got a lot going on in one area? So one thing you can do is you can have paper towels handy. So let's just put a lot of purple on this area here. Really get a lot of purple. And you see I'm starting to form a puddle. You can take a paper towel and soak up the color. You blot it or tap it like we tap glue onto paper, or you can get a natural sponge from an art store or just a plain kitchen sponge and make it smaller, and you can use the sponge to dab the paint. It's good to have these handy. And remember, the other thing you can do is water moves, like water in a river or stream. If you got a lot of color in one area and you don't want to do the paper towel, you can move that color around instead of blotting it out. Move it to a different part of the paper. All right, another thing another thing you can do to get rid of excess water, and also it's a little bit of fun, is you can take a bit, I've got a little container of salt here. You can take some salt, and anywhere where you have a puddle, you can sprinkle the salt, and it absorbs the color and the water. Now, I'm going to just do it the opposite way so you can see. I don't know if you can see the salt there, but you see how it instantly soaks it up. It instantly soaks it up. So that's kind of fun to play with too, just to change your routine of your watercolor. Now, the other thing you can do, which is also fun, is you can take, this isn't dishwashing soap, it's glue. You can squeeze some glue on the paper and make a design with glue, and then let that glue dry. Maybe even sprinkle a little bit of salt on the glue. Let it dry overnight. And then the next day, between your designs, now I'm going to do it a little bit beforehand, you can paint in between the design, and the watercolor isn't going to go anywhere because the glue is acting like a barrier. It's acting like a barrier. Do you see that? And it'll work even better when it's dry, because you don't want to mix, then you'll get a gluey watercolor mess, and you don't want that, right? So another thing you can do along with your watercolor is you can do resist. You can use a crayon, an oil pastel or a regular crayon, and you can, I'm going to use another piece of paper here. You can draw something, anything you want, anything, and then use your watercolor. And this is what we did with our self-portraits. You can go in and you see how you can still see the line there. It kind of goes around and you can see the line, and it's resisting the area. So that's called resist. That's always a fun one for everybody. So those are some few techniques. And the other thing I want to talk to you about is if you've got a lot of paint, and this is something too for regular tempera paint too that we often don't say enough, is let's say I've got a lot of paint on my brush. Don't forget to remind the children, or if it's you kids listening to me, scrape the sides if you have too much, right? Scrape the sides first. You don't want the paint, whether you're doing watercolor or tempera paint, to be dripping off your brush. And the side of your dish, whether it's a thing of paint or watercolor with water, scrape your sides. Okay, I hope that that helped you a little bit with techniques. And remember, watercolor can be very soothing. It can be very peaceful. If there's a stressful moment during the day, watercolor is a really nice thing to pull out. It's not that messy, and a little music behind it, and it's really a calming, wonderful thing. I don't know if it's the water or the delicateness of the colors, but there's something about it that just makes things a little nicer. All right, now I'll see you later. Take care.